I want you to picture two guys who went to the same college, graduated the same year, got jobs at similar companies, and retired within 6 months of each other. We'll call them Alan and Greg. Alan has $1.9 million in his 401k. Greg has $210,000. Same career length, similar salaries, neither inherited money, neither went through a catastrophic divorce. The difference between them wasn't income, it wasn't market timing, it wasn't even intelligence. It was one single behavioral pattern repeated every year for 4 decades. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what that pattern was. More importantly, you're going to know where you actually stand right now, because most people genuinely have no idea, and the gap between what they assume they're on track for and what they actually need is enormous. My name is Joe. I spend too much time buried in Federal Reserve survey data, Fidelity actuarial tables, and Social Security trustees reports that nobody reads because they're designed to be unreadable. If you've ever searched, "How much should I have saved in my 401k by age?" and gotten a number that either scared you or felt weirdly arbitrary, this video is for you. Subscribe and like if it helps. Here's the problem with every benchmark you've ever seen. They tell you what the destination looks like. They don't tell you whether you have enough fuel to get there. That's the metaphor I'm going to carry through this video. A flight plan. When a pilot files a flight plan, they calculate fuel load, expected headwinds, contingency reserves, and a diversion airport in case of emergency. They don't just write the destination and assume the fuel handles itself. Most retirement planning is the pilot who wrote down the destination, assumed the fuel was fine, and didn't check the weather. The benchmarks you see everywhere are the destination. They tell you nothing about whether your assumptions are correct, whether your runway is long enough, or what happens if anything changes. I'm going to walk you through the actual numbers by age and then explain what those numbers quietly assume that nobody mentions. By 30, the standard benchmark is 1 times your annual salary. If you earn $55,000, you should have roughly $55,000 saved. Sounds manageable. But here's what the benchmark doesn't say. At 30, compound growth is still barely pulling its weight. The number that actually matters is not the balance, it's the contribution rate. Are you putting in at least 15% of gross income, including the employer match? If not, no balance milestone covers the gap that creates over time. By 35, you should be at 1 to 2 times salary, but most people hit 35 and have already taken at least one 401k loan, a house down payment, a career change, a kid, real life. And those withdrawals don't just reduce the balance, they remove decades of future compounding. A $15,000 401k loan at 35 can cost you between $80,000 and $100,000 in retirement funds by 65. You're not just losing $15,000, you're losing 40 years of compound growth on $15,000. By 40, the benchmark is 3 times salary. But 3 times salary assumes consistent contributions since your mid-20s. The Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances shows the median 401k balance for households between 35 and 44 is around $45,000. 3 times the median salary is closer to $175,000. That's a $130,000 gap between benchmark and reality for the median American household, not a rounding error. The difference between comfortable and desperate. By 50, you should be at 6 times salary. This is where the psychological trap snaps shut, because 50 is also when most people do the serious math for the first time. They pull up the balance, realize they're short by a number that feels impossible to close, and then one of 2 things happens. Either they shut down because the hole feels too deep, or they panic and start chasing returns in ways that usually make things worse. The math does allow for recovery at 50, but only if you use the specific tools available and don't let fear drive the decisions. Here's what most content misses about being underfunded at 50. The IRS allows catch-up contributions starting at that age. In 2025, you can contribute up to $31,000 per year into your 401k instead of the standard $23,500. If you're 50 with $200,000 saved and contribute $31,000 per year for 15 years at 7% returns, you reach roughly $990,000 at retirement. Not $2 million, but close enough to actually retire, especially combined with Social Security. By 60, the benchmark is 8 times salary. By 67, 10 times. But those benchmarks assume 3 things nobody says out loud. They assume you'll spend 80% of pre-retirement income in retirement. They assume 2.5% inflation, and they assume Social Security arrives intact. Here's what the flight plan didn't account for. Healthcare costs for a retired couple average $315,000 over the course of retirement, according to Fidelity's own data. That single number chews through most of a $200,000 balance on its own. And the Social Security Trustees report projects the trust fund will be depleted by 2033. Under current law, that triggers an automatic 23% benefit cut. If you're 55 right now, by 65 your Social Security check could be 3/4 of what you were promised. That's not a prediction, it's written in the report. Your benchmark didn't include those headwinds. Now, back to Alan and Greg. Alan contributed 15% of his salary starting at 24 and never stopped. Not during the 2008 crash, not when he bought his house, not when childcare was eating half his take-home. He treated the 401k like a utility bill, non-negotiable, not subject to monthly reconsideration. Greg contributed 6%, just enough to get the company match. When raises came, Lifestyle expanded to absorb them. When money felt tight, he paused contributions twice, each time for about 8 months. He never cashed out, but he never treated it as the first call on his income. That's it. 15% versus 6% for 40 years. 1 pause policy versus 2 pauses. The compounding did the rest. At 7% annual returns, the difference between contributing 6% and 15% of a $70,000 over 40 years is approximately $1.5 million. Not because of stock picking, not because of timing, because of the percentage set at the start and the decision never to renegotiate it. Here's the practical protocol. 3 things you can do this week. 1. Find your real contribution rate tonight. Log into your 401k portal, check your balance and your contribution rate as a percentage of gross salary compared to the age benchmarks. If the balance is below benchmark and the rate is below 15%, both need to change. Start with the rate. 2. Turn on auto escalation. Most 401k plans let you increase contributions by 1% per year automatically. If you're at 8%, set it to escalate to 9% next January. You won't feel a 1% shift in monthly take-home. The compounding difference over 20 years is real. 3. Treat 401k loans like the retirement penalty they are. Every dollar you borrow stops compounding immediately and stays stopped until repaid. You then pay it back with after-tax dollars that get taxed again at withdrawal. A $15,000 loan at 35 costs roughly $90,000 in eventual retirement wealth. Unless something genuinely catastrophic is happening, find another way. Here's the bigger picture. The benchmarks are real. The catch-up rules are written in plain English on the IRS website. None of this is hidden. So why does the median household between 55 and 64 have only $185,000 saved when the benchmark for that age is closer to $700,000? Because knowing the destination and filing the flight plan are 2 completely different things. People know they should save 15%. They've seen the calculators. They just haven't changed the number in the portal because spending less today feels worse than a better future feels good. That's not a willpower failure. That's how human psychology works. The fix is automating the decision so it never needs to be made again. Alan didn't think about his 401k every month. He set up 15% in 1984, turned on auto escalation when it became available, and checked the account once a year. The system ran while his life happened around it. Greg thought about retirement constantly after 55. Thinking without changing behavior is just expensive anxiety. Here's what I want you to leave with. The benchmarks matter, use them, but the only number that determines where you land is the contribution rate you're running right now. Everything else is downstream of that one decision. Check it tonight, change it if it needs to change, turn on the escalation, then close the tab. That's the flight plan. Nothing exciting, but it's the one that actually lands.